boys and girls. Today we are going to do Math, Chapter 14, Lesson 2, and it is about polygons. We're going to start with a short little video clip.
Two-dimensional figures. Mary noticed that all stop signs are figures that have 8 sides. The shape of the stop sign is a polygon. A two-dimensional figure, or plane figure, has length and width. A polygon is a closed two-dimensional figure of 3 or more line segments and angles. Polygons are named by the number of sides they have. Triangle. A triangle has 3 sides and 3 angles. Quadrilateral. A quadrilateral has 4 sides and 4 angles. Pentagon. A pentagon has 5 sides and 5 angles. Hexagon. A hexagon has 6 sides and 6 angles. Octagon. An octagon has 8 sides and 8 angles. Describe the polygon. There are 8 sides and 8 angles, so it is an octagon. Let's try another one. Describe this polygon. There are 5 sides and 5 angles, so it is a pentagon.
All right, so boys and girls, Lesson 2 of Chapter 14 is about polygons. And you might be wondering, what is a polygon? A polygon is a closed two-dimensional figure that is formed by 3 or more straight lines that do not cross one another. Okay? So that means it's going to be a closed figure. Like this is a closed figure. This is not a closed figure because these two ends never meet. Okay? So this is a polygon. This is not a polygon. Two-dimensional means that it's flat. It means that it's not three-dimensional. One little story about how to remember this: when my daughter was little, the way that she used to be able to remember and keep track of what a polygon was and what two-dimensional was versus three-dimensional was she said that if it's two-dimensional, it can be run through a laminator. If it's three-dimensional, it can't be laminated. So if that helps you to remember the difference between two-dimensional and three-dimensional, this marker is three-dimensional. It can't go through the laminator. But this piece of paper can get laminated. It's only two-dimensional. So a shape or a polygon is two-dimensional. It can be run through a laminator. So if that's a way that helps you remember, then all right. So let's start by talking about some of the vocabulary that you're going to come across in this lesson. So polygon is probably one of the new vocabulary words, but there's another vocabulary word that you're going to find that you're going to have to explain, and that word is called attribute. And an attribute is basically just a characteristic of that shape. An attribute is how you can describe a shape. If I were going to describe a triangle, I could describe it by saying that it has 3 sides and 3 angles. If I were going to describe an octagon, I could say it has 8 sides and 8 angles. And so an attribute is just kind of a fancy math word for how you can describe a polygon. Okay? So we are on page 839 for lesson 2, and let's get started with our first example. So here we have a soccer ball, and we're not going to look at the whole soccer ball. We're just looking at the blue shape that's outlined in white here. And we're going to describe and classify the polygon by its attributes. describe and classify. If we classify, that means we're naming it. If we're naming that shape, that polygon, we're going to use its attributes. That means the number of sides and angles it has, so that then we can name what kind of polygon it is. So we are going to call this polygon, let's see, its attributes are that it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 angles. So if I look at its attributes, it has 5 sides and 5 angles, then I can classify or name it as a pentagon. So the blue shape outlined in white has 5 sides and 5 angles, so we know that it's called a pentagon. The 5 sides and the 5 angles, those are its attributes. When we name it a pentagon, because of its angles and sides, that's called classifying. All right, let's take a look at example number 2. This one looks familiar. It's the same example that we had in the video. This road sign, this stop sign, is a polygon. It's a closed two-dimensional figure. We need to describe and classify the polygon by its attributes. So that means we need to figure out what it's called, what its name is, based on how many sides and how many angles it has. So this stop sign has 8 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sides. It has 8 angles, and I know that polygons with 8 sides and 8 angles are called octagons. So that's how I can classify that stop sign as an octagon. I looked at its attributes, the number of sides and angles it had, and I remembered that octagons are the polygons that have 8 sides and 8 angles. All right. Now, let's take a look. This isn't going to show up as well as it does in your book, I don't think. This is a really excellent resource for you. It names the triangles, the quadrilaterals. It names all of those different polygons. We've got pentagons, hexagons, and octagons. It doesn't show up on my screen, but it definitely is in your book on page 840. And this is something that can help you. It's going to name all of those polygons that we're going to be using in the lesson. It gives us the attributes that we need, and it even shows us some pictures of what they are. So we would use these attributes so that we can name or classify the polygon it is. Okay? So we've got 2 different types of triangles. This is a square, and this is a trapezoid. Now, a trapezoid is different from a square, but they are both quadrilaterals because they both have 4 sides and 4 angles. They look different, but they are still quadrilaterals because they have 4 sides and 4 angles. Okay, here's the pentagon. I just had to go to the next screen. So a pentagon has 5 sides and 5 angles. This is called a regular pentagon, and it's called regular because it has all 5 sides are the same length and all 5 angles are the same too. This would be an irregular pentagon. It still has 5 sides and 5 angles, but they're not all exactly the same. So it's an irregular pentagon. So they're still both pentagons because they both have 5 sides and 5 angles. Then we have our hexagon, 6 sides and 6 angles. Once again, this is our regular hexagon. All 6 sides are equal. All 6 angles are equal. Then we have our irregular hexagon. It still has 6 sides and 6 angles, but the sides and angles aren't all equal. And then our octagon, which we've seen a couple of times. This is our regular octagon, And this is the irregular octagon because it does have 8 sides and 8 angles, but they are not equal. All right, let's take a look at our guided practice on the bottom of page 840. So it says to describe the shape of the sign below and determine the number of sides and angles and then classify the shape. Now we know that when we classify the shape, we are naming it. So this is a no passing zone sign. And you might see this on the road sometime. And now let's take a look. How many sides does it have? This is how we're going to look at the attributes. This sign has 1, 2, 3 sides. So I'm going to write the number 3 in here. How many angles does it have? It has 1, 2, 3 angles. So I'm going to remember that polygons that have 3 sides and 3 angles, those are called triangles. So that's how I can classify it. I classify it as a triangle. All right. Let's take a look at the directions for the independent practice. And then you can work on that on your own. So for the independent practice, the first couple are very similar to the guided practice. We're going to take a look at the polygon, describe its attributes, its number of sides and number of angles, and then classify by telling what kind of polygon it is. Use that resource on page 840 if you need to. So you'll do that for numbers 2 and 3. Okay, here we have some objects that are shaped like things. So I'm still going to do the same thing. I'm going to count the number of sides and angles so that I can classify what it looks like. Okay, now when you get to number 7, let me skip down to number 7. Oh, nope, number 8, sorry. Number 8. Here, all it says is a triangle and a quadrilateral. The directions here just say to draw an example of each polygon. You can use that resource on page 841 or 840 to help you. You can draw one of those polygons, or you can draw your own triangle or quadrilateral. Okay? All right. Now let's take a look at page 842 at our brain builders and problem solving. So these are probably the ones that you have the most trouble with, I would imagine. So let's take a look. We'll spend some more time on these. Bryson pushed a square pattern block, this orange square pattern block, and a triangular pattern block. He pushed them together. What new polygon did he create? So let's take a look. If I'm just looking at both of these together now, kind of looks like a house, doesn't it? But how many sides and angles does it have now? That's how I know what kind of polygon. I'll use the attributes to name it. All right. Let's take a look at number 11. It says to classify the polygon that has fewer angles than a pentagon, but more angles than a triangle. So a pentagon I know has 5 angles. A triangle has 3 angles. So which polygon would have less than 5 angles and more than 3 angles, and what is it called? So I need to write the name of that polygon there. Okay? So that's how you're going to do number 11. All right, let's take a look at number 12. All right, number 12 says to explain why each figure below is not a polygon. Then draw a figure with 6 sides that is a polygon. So we can look at both of these figures and I know that they are not polygons because I know that a polygon is a two-dimensional figure that is formed by 3 or more straight lines that do not cross. Well, why is this not a polygon? Why is this not a polygon? Then don't forget to draw a figure that has 6 sides that is a polygon. All right, let's look at number 13. Number 13 says to draw an example of a figure that is not a polygon and explain why. So draw any figure that is not a polygon and then just tell why it's not a polygon. Try to be more creative and don't just copy the ones from number 12. Okay? All right. All right, we are going to stop there. Try numbers 14 and 15. See how you do on those.